So let's start with emotion before behavior. Okay, so how the brain works is this is just one part of the three, which is a thought that comes in, then we have a feeling, and then we have a behavior. So, and that's the next slide. So let's talk about why we need to know what the thoughts are. That's a whole other class. And then why we need to go through what we're feeling, because that does relate to the behavior that we have. So Gottman says, much of today's popular advice ignores the world of emotion. Instead, it relies on the child-rearing theories that address the child's behavior, which, yes, we talk about behavior, but disregard the feelings that underlie that behavior. We always have a feeling first. We have to stop there and figure out what is going on. So he has 5 steps of emotional coaching in one chapter of his book. The book is locked up in my office, or I'd show it to you, and so I haven't had to go back in through it, but I have other, lots of all of his other resources. Gottman has a great website that has so much information and blogs and lots of articles, tons of articles. He is a relationship therapist. His specialty at 45 years almost is just relationships with couples. But he did write a book called How to Raise an Emotionally Intelligent Child, and that's what this is about. It's one of my favorite things to do with play therapy. I'm a very emotionally focused therapist. It's very, very important. I know how the brain works with that. And right now, in a pandemic, we are having strong emotion, lack of emotion, burnout. We're starting all this process is a little different. So this is so relevant to right now. And I hope it's helpful. And I hope you take it further. I hope you use the PowerPoints. I hope you use the PowerPoint and use the resources. I've got one paper that I didn't download, but I'm going to send it to Heather of like some, just off the web, so you can do a PDF and print some of the stuff off and use it at home. So with that said, like I said, thoughts, feelings, behavior. So if you can't see my slide, if you're on your phone or if you're on dialing in just with your phone and not with, you can't see my screen, then I'll try to explain it, but you'll get this PowerPoint later so you can look at it. So this screen is about the brain cycle. So here's a thought, like I said, here's a feeling, here's a behavior. So the frontal lobes is where we self-talk, where we have the physical response, where we have the reasoning, logic, and emotion. So this is where we want to be. This is where we self-talk. So you have a thought come in, then you self-talk, and this is where, and then we have a feeling and a physiological response. So this is super important. Make sure you understand that, because as parents, as humans, this is just how it is. And so if the child is not self-talking, is not still here, okay, and we jump to fight, flight, or freeze, that's a whole other issue. So this is pretty like basic of, here's a child. Yes, they might be a little bit in their fight, flight, or freeze. They might be angry, right? They might be fighting. And so they're not able to have this self-talk right now, but that's what your job is to do, some emotional coaching, help them reason, help them get into their emotional logical brain again. Okay, this is up here, midbrain. Now kids with a little bit more, autism, some anxiety disorders, won't have that self-talk as much. So we have to help with that. And there's lots of other things that help with that. That's long-term therapy, that's meditation, that's mindfulness, we're having, I think the next class this week is on mindfulness and meditation. And I talked a lot about that last week. Not a lot, but a little bit in my PowerPoint, on how to just take care of your mental health. And so there's lots of these classes and past classes that you can tap into. And so it's all related. So we have to know what our thought is. Okay, that's thoughts that come in. And then I feel this certain feeling, and then you're going to have a behavior because of it. So So this is, emotion is a fourth of our balance. So we got to look at this always. I constantly use this because it's 25% of what we have here. So if we're out of balance in our emotional spiritual, we're not grounded, we're not emotionally intelligent, we're not connected, for example, just those a few things, then we're out of balance. So if we're out of balance, and of course, I talked about this in the mental health class, is like, okay, mental health, we have to have physical, mental, social, and emotional balance to continue our mental health, which is how we feel, how we think, how we feel, and how we behave, which is just what I went over. So it's serious stuff about just, it's all mental health. And so here's your balance. So the challenge of this is to look at your time, energy, money, and where you put that time, energy, money into which part of your balance. So if it's physical, I was telling my colleagues this morning that, of course, at 11 o'clock last night, I'm looking on Amazon. I'm like, oh, I got to order this. How long is this taking for this? And I'm like, I need a little elliptical for my office. I need to get on the elliptical. And yes, it's getting nicer outside. I can go walk. I do a lot of yard work, but I'm like, I can't go to the gym. So what do? I ordered an elliptical last night. So where are your time, energy, and money? I'm like, okay, I'll order something and have it sent. So because I feel out of balance, and I want to keep that balance intact so I don't go into burnout. So look at your balance, see how emotionally intelligent you are as a family, as yourself, and then see what we can do to add to that balance. So this is an example of primary emotion. So we are going to go over my little wheel. This is my favorite thing ever. I use it a ton, and I'll send this in your handout. So primary emotion, the middle here, is, and this is my own wheel. I've calculated it a little bit to where, with research and books and how I teach emotional intelligence, primary emotions that I use are sad, mad, surprised, peaceful, happy, shame. Peaceful could go under happy, but peaceful is a little bit different emotion to me than just happy. So peaceful is sometimes, and I use peaceful as a secondary emotion, but it's in there, okay? So shame, for example, is a primary emotion, and a lot of people don't understand that part, but now you do. So what shame does is it leads to a secondary emotion. So shame, primary emotion, and then here's some ideas of two secondary emotions of I feel worthless and I feel weak. Because someone shamed me and they told me I couldn't cry when I was scared. Okay, so, and then what that does is the third party is what I call it, is loss, grief, trauma, and powerless. So there's three examples of what that could lead to. So of course it's rooted in loss and grief and powerless and trauma. Okay, so that's the root. So shame is just a leafy issue, is on the tree. I actually have my tree right here. It's like, here's the leafy issue. So the same thing that's on the top of my wheel, that's what's going on, I do this little exercise with the tree. What's going on? What's going on is, here's an issue, that's a primary. Secondary emotion is the trunk, and the root issue down here in the roots is loss, grief, and trauma, and powerless. So same thing with, so when you get this wheel, you'll be able to understand it. So then the outside of the wheel, if we're in this side of the wheel, then we have powerless, trauma, loss, and grief. That is the main root issue of that primary emotion that's here. So this leads to this leads to that. So hopefully that helps and you can understand that a little bit. So that's an example of what shame leads to, or what the root issue is pushing, right? So the leafy issue drops to the root, it feeds the loss, grief, and powerless and trauma. So whatever that looks like, it can be a lot of different events. We're in loss, grief, and powerless and trauma right now, and we want to reduce and combat those, right? So here's another example of primary emotion, so happy. So happy equals I feel hopeful and I feel safe. And what that does on the other side of the wheel, so the loss, grief, and trauma powerless is on that side. Well, on this side, it's I feel worthy, I have worth, I have a higher purpose, and I feel understood. Now, understood is a very, very powerful thing that we have to understand. I don't just feel loved and belonged, I feel understood. So there's lots of, we have to feel loved and belong as humans, we have to have connection. But in order to do that, you have to feel understood. So if you feel happy and hopeful, you feel understood and you feel safe. So do you see how those lead to those other things? Or it starts here, I feel understood. So wait, I feel safe. Oh wait, I am happy. Because when a child feels understood, I guarantee you they feel safe. Safe is a root issue of understood, and understood is a root issue of safe. And so when we don't feel safe, we don't feel understood usually. And that's what emotional coaching is about, is to help all of us feel just a little bit more understood. And I didn't reference this book, but I always talk about that word, understood. And habit 5 in Highly Effective People by Covey is seek to understand first before you're understood. So wouldn't the world be different if we sought to understand people or something that was going on before we were understood? And that would produce hopeful, safe, worthy, I have a higher purpose in life, I feel understood, I feel just worthy to be understood. So I think it's pretty powerful. So secondary emotions, okay. And by the way, I have a shame cycle here of the next one too, of like, here's shame and here's a big, shame cycle. But the secondary emotions, like I said, here's mad. Okay, so here's this little guy that's mad on the screen, and he's mad. And what happens is I'm frustrated, and then I'm insecure, and I feel jealous. And so these are all secondary emotions. And then I outrage, and then I have resentment, and then I feel lonely and worthless because I feel insecure. And then I got jealous, and then I got annoyed and hurt because someone left me out of the playground fun. So this is so typical of lots of what my kids and teens are saying. And they don't understand some of what it leads to. And frustration, anger leads to deep resentment and hurt and jealousy and hurt, and annoyed. And so irritability from mad. So here's mad, and you're just mad. And rage and outrage and irritability happens. And that if that goes on for a long period of time, there's not just a time frame for it, but irritability is a root issue of depression and of low mood. So if we're having all these and we're having them daily, we've got some irritability going on, is the word, then you need to watch that and maybe get help for that. And I'll talk about teens for a second, a little bit later. They're a little bit different, but this is in general for every age, all of us. This is just information for all of us. So it's like, wow, you can see how resentment comes from frustration and jealousy and loneliness and insecurity, so they all circle together. So that's just some examples of this wheel. And I think this gives you a good visual. And shame. So here's shame, primary emotion again, secondary emotions, weakness, risk, not enough, I feel incapable, I feel unloved, I feel powerless, I feel raw, I feel disconnected, I feel bullied, I feel unworthy, I feel rooted in this misunderstanding. And that's shame cycle. So just watch the shame. I did a whole parenting on shame resilience last month, I think. Was it last month? Yeah. So if you want that one, super good. So just on shame resilient parenting, a lot of Brene Brown stuff. Okay, but this is what we're talking about today, is 5 steps of emotional intelligence. So these are the main 5 steps. in general, and I've made it so, and I'm gonna put the 5 steps from this PowerPoint just in a PDF so you can print it off and put it on the fridge. Because that's what I would normally hand you in a therapy session. Here's the 5 steps of emotionally intelligent coaching from the book Gottman, How to Raise an Emotionally Intelligent Child. Because he just has one chapter, it's like chapter 10, I think it's 12, but maybe that's not right. So one chapter just on this part. It's only a tiny section of the book. The book is so good. It's like, you know, $15 on Amazon or whatever. So it's so worth getting the whole book. But this is just one part of it, and it's the most important part that's very easy to go through the steps with. So recognize, become aware and intelligent of all emotions, number 1. Recognize and the opportunity for teaching and intimacy, number 2. And number 3, listen, validate, and reflect. Number 4, coach the child and label how they feel. And 5, set limits and problem solve. So we're going to go through each one of these. Number 1, it's kind of like, if I'm teaching a class, I would love that, you know, we were all like in a room together. Because it's fun to have interaction. But so for sure, chime in here and there, but I'll go through these quickly so we get through them, and then do a private chat if you want to add something or have a question. So number 1, become an intelligent person of all emotions. So the parent must be aware and be comfortable with, I gotta move with their own emotions first and experience them daily. So comfortable and experience. Gotta be comfortable, then we gotta experience. It's crucial to allow all feelings to be in a non-shaming way. So how we do that? How do you experience, how do you be comfortable with it first? That's from your own emotional coaching from your childhood. I'm sorry, but statistics from Brene Brown and Gottman all show that we didn't do very good for 2 generations ago or 3 generations ago, but we've gotten better at emotionally coaching without shame. So if you were like, shut up, sit down, stop crying, why are you doing this? Why are you throwing a fit? You have nothing to cry about. Go back outside, leave me alone. Why are you bothering me with your, you know, problems? That's not emotional coaching. That's shame, and that's critical. And that's, you're told that you're not allowed to be comfortable in that emotion. And I can't sit with you in your emotion right now. You just need to stop it. And no judgment. We've all done it. Stop it. Why are you acting that way? Why are you throwing a fit in the grocery store? I mean, and that's just what we did. But we're not doing that anymore as much. We want to get into non-shaming emotional coaching. It's crucial that you are comfortable with emotions. If you can't sit with emotions, I know, you know, the genders are different. So it's harder for some than others in genders. We all know that men have a harder time sitting in emotion. Women sit in emotion first, and men are more logical. So we want to switch that frontal lobe up a little bit and get into the middle of using both and being comfortable with a strong emotion. So start by writing down your secondary emotions every day. You should be able to write down 30 secondary emotions every day that you have. That is not abnormal to go like this all day long, up and down, up and down, up and down. Now, what's not normal is to be super happy all day long or for 7 days straight, or to be zero, to be like an zero affect. What's not normal is to sit down here and be in a very low mood and not have the up and down. So you should have 30 easily, 30 secondary emotions that you have every day. Fearful, invisible, I feel helpful. I feel worried, I feel horrified, I'm grateful. Wait, I feel respected, I'm confident, I'm safe, I'm shocked. Oh wait, free, wanted, appreciated, respected. I feel humiliated, I feel worthless, guilty. I feel embarrassed, ugly, worthless, powerless, insecure, frustrated, annoyed, jealous. I feel inadequate. So that's my little chart that you can find those on. There's moments where you just are in the moment and you just be, and that's okay. Well, then that's content and that's peace and that's, I'm just working along, I'm just doing this. But we've got to be present to be able to find these emotions and not stuffing. We can't be impaired. We can't be burned out. You're not going to be able to find those. So those two and other issues block this, so we don't find emotion. And so Brene Brown says most adults know happy, sad, and pissed off. That's the three emotions that most adults can find all the time. That's not enough. Those are primary emotions. It doesn't help us relate and communicate. I feel disrespected, would you yell at me? That's a secondary emotion. You must know those so you can get your needs met. Your child needs 10 emotions a day. Start with 10, start with 3, start with 10, whatever you want to do. And these are the tips. I kind of did the 5 steps, and then I came up with the tips that I use in therapy and teach parents to do, so you actually have a solution in this. So number 1, in how to get intelligent, get a poster. Small children need faces, so I have a printout of just the faces, so they can choose the face. I put a whiteboard in their room or in a common area in the house that's up, and it has all the different colors of markers, so that child can go to that whiteboard and just, you know what, why don't you go on the whiteboard and draw how you're feeling? Keep a journal. So these are all ways to unstuff. We do not want to teach a child to stuff their emotions, because stuffers turn into volcanoes. We were taught to stuff. Shut up, be quiet, I don't know, we meaning, I mean, my generation, my parents' generation. So they didn't really emotionally coach me. And most teachers didn't really know how to do that. And, so congratulations if you were emotionally coached for the majority of your life, or maybe just once. I had a track coach that did emotionally coach me, but it was like, in that moment, when you remember someone sitting in your space and it was okay. They just sat in your space. That's emotional coaching. They didn't judge you, tell you what to do. Yeah.
We've got a question. They said, so
okay.
How do you handle it when you are okay to sit in emotion and helping the kiddo sit in it? However, your spouse is not and often tells him to stop crying even when he is hurt.
Okay, so what you're talking about is 2 parents on 2 different pages, right? 2 different ways to doing things, and that's pretty typical. So this is why I have you share it with the other parent and say, okay, and at the end of these 5 stages, it talks about your family values. What is your family values? So that's typical, right? Male, just in general, no judge, no, in general, I was raised to be tough, and weakness is emotion. And that's what Brene Brown research shows over and over and over and over again, that we were taught that emotion is weakness. So stop crying. You don't have anything to cry about. And especially if the boy is male, the son, right? Because it's like, that's not okay. You got to just pull your britches up, And so that's just typical, right? So it's just sharing this and then getting on the same page somewhere. Get in the same book, which is this. Get in the same chapter, which is emotional intelligent coaching. 1 chapter. Get in that chapter. Now, I can get couples on the same page. I really can. But with parenting, you've got to be on the same page, because you've got one that's nurturing and one that's shaming. That's not doing any good. So read the book, go in there and say, okay, but can I get parents on the same sentence? I sure can. Am I ever going to get parents on the same page? I mean, on the same word? No, it's impossible. But on the same sentence, you can really move through this as a couple, because it's crucial that you're consistent. So good question. So some more tips. You got the whiteboard, you got the markers, you've got a journal. I've said this before in one of the other classes, but you go to the dollar store, you get a bag, 1 sad, mad, happy bag, and you put things in the bag that is for that emotion. And that helps the kid self-regulate. Hey, it seems like you're really upset. So why don't you go get your mad bag, because I can't help you right now. So it's a good distraction. And they go get their mad bag and they're mad and they're squeezing a ball and they're throwing, and they're throwing a stuffed animal at the corner and, all those things that are in that mad bag. And that's okay. That makes sense. So recognizing the opportunity for teaching.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my question, is it apply for teenagers too?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is never too late, right? It's never too late to emotionally coach a kid. Teenagers, the most important. We've got to so what happens is we want to try to misunderstand our teenagers and try to tell them what they need to do or feel.
Yeah.
And that's what this one is we try to fix it and treat our authority or someone we need to fix. So this is the next one that helps for teenagers the most, because this is what we do with teens the most. Kids, it's so easy to sit down on the floor with them and go, oh my gosh, your tears are so big and I'm so sorry that your brother hit you. But then teenagers are like, they're brutal. I mean, my last kid, thank God that, I've got one left. But I have my
I have two. That's why I asked a question. Thank you.
Is that her vocabulary is, what do you want? Get out. What do you want? What do you want? Get out. I mean, that's it. And it's hilarious. I mean, I wouldn't say anything that would embarrass, this is going far and out to the world, but you know what? It's normal. It's so normal. Now, I'm going to try to touch on teens a little bit with some tips at the end, because it's during this time, especially. But so as parents, we need to teach and model empathy to build intimacy and trust. And the thing is that has nothing to do with the teen and the kid. They don't trust us, we don't trust them, but you have to show that and build empathy and trust. It's like, well, I don't trust them. They don't trust me, but really they do. All emotions are not a threat of our authority. So what happens when we have teenagers, we go into personalization as your threat is to my authority. Now I have a big, I had 25 foster kids that I raised over a 10-year period, along with my 3 girls. And man, I could not take their emotion personal and as an authoritarian to them, right? I had to go into, that's not mine, I'm not there, it's not authority, it's not the problem of a threat to my authority. It is, we don't need to fix this, we don't need to do anything, we just need to be in their space. And you have to sit in a strong emotion with kids, especially during crisis times, which teenagers are in their crisis stress response brain constantly. So how you do that is you sit in there with, I can struggle with you and I am your ally and I can face the struggle with you. That's really, really tough. The way that you, and you're not alone and you're not weak. And here's empathy. I get it. I've been in your place. Life is tough. Be consistent with your responses and emotion to model the emotion. And now that's tough if you've got 2 parents on a different page with that. So you've got one parent mirroring this and one parent mirroring that, right? You get in trouble when you have a strong emotion and you throw a fit when you're given an instruction. I have a really good class that I did several months ago that was just about how to follow instructions. How do we follow instructions? Well, I've got lots of kids in my office and lots of parents going, I give them a simple instruction and they throw a complete fit on the floor. Yeah, right? It's simple instruction. So how do we deal with that? Well, we have to immediately go into emotion coaching better. So that kid knows that, okay, here's your tantrum, here's your anger, here's your frustration, it's something else that's going on, okay? Always. It's not the instruction that you gave them. Okay, it's time to unload the dishes. Well, you already know that the time that you're supposed to unload the dishes is between 6 and 7. So here it is. I'm going to coach and challenge you to get the dishes done by 7. But, so here's a reminder. And then they throw a fit. it's a challenge. It's it's really difficult.
Hey, Carol.
Yeah.
Just something I feel like I'm hearing you say, and I've seen this in books and other places. I think it's the concept of listening to reply versus listening to understand, if that makes sense.
Well, you can't reply unless you understand first.
Right.
So yes, you can reply.
Just maybe a smidgen of context. It's easy for people to respond and just say something back to somebody and reply that way, is the way I've understood it, versus being able to sit, not say something for a second, and reflect and join in with them like you're talking about emotionally, so that we connect on that level. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, totally makes sense. So that's empathy.
Okay.
And that's the next slide. Yep. That's empathy versus sympathy. So here's empathy. You sit in their space, don't say anything. That's really hard for people to do. Sympathy is not what we want. And there's a little video here. Sometimes I've taken the time to play it so you can listen to it. It's 3.5 minutes. Just watch it. Just Google it. It's Brene Brown's Empathy versus Sympathy. So I'll cap it really quick. So here's empathy. I can be in your hole. I can be in your space. I'm going to crawl down in your space when you need something. Sympathy is like, I see you down there. Do you want a sandwich? Oh, it sucks to be you. You poor thing. You poor little thing. She has a Texas accent. I love Brene Brown. She's my hero. So here's her research, and here's what she's done with the world in changing our emphasis and our understanding of empathy. Because shame is sympathy. Oh, you poor thing down there. I hate to be you, and someone's in a hole, in some sort of sad emotion or any kind of emotion. And so here's the thing is love and belonging, your worthlessness is, if it's your birthright and not something you have to earn, anything is possible, right? We understand that when you get to a place where you understand that love and belonging, your worthlessness is a birthright, not something you have to earn. You don't have to earn that. But what do we do as society? We strive. Teenagers, my young first, second, third graders, I'm seeing so much of this, and it hits in fourth grade, actually. Fourth grade, worthlessness hits, shame hits. Our bullying epidemic starts in fourth grade right now. That's what it's showing. So it's like, well, wait, I don't, my worthlessness isn't my birthright. I have to earn this. I have to earn it from other people. I have to earn it from my teachers. I have to earn it from society. I have to earn it from the magazines and the TV. And what it's showing what we need to do. It's really damaging. So this is a little video. It's a little cartoon. She explains the difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy is relating with the emotion. It's not the event. All of our events are different. It's not walking in people's shoes, people. It is so not walking. That statement, I despise it. I explain why. You don't have to walk in the event. It's walking in the emotion. It's not the shoes, but it is. You can look at it that way, but just look at it as the emotion, because all of our events are different. I can't sit in someone's event, but I can sit in their emotion every day because we have the same emotion. That's empathy. The other one is sympathy. So number 3, listen, validate, and reflect. So that's a little bit what you're talking about. So like how to see their perspective and respond, but not, just you respond, but in a empathetic way of just sitting in their spaces responding. So you have to listen first. Then with physical evidence, you're seeing your kid's perspective, which is empathy, and understanding. You have to see their perspective. If you're a black and white thinker, which is the number one out of the 10 thinking errors, if you're a black and white all or nothing thinker, you're not going to see someone else's perspective. That's what that means. So you reflect on the facial responses. I'm always like, oh, I see that your alligator tears are super big right now. Wow, you're kicking your feet the best I have seen you kick your feet in like a month. You must be really, really blank, upset, tired, frustrated, outraged, whatever that secondary emotion is, you label it. That's the next slide. But so this is first, you listen, validate, reflect. And here's the observation. Just observation. That's just, you just observe. Here's the observation. And then you can state what you hear, see, feel, touch. No correction. In play therapy, I never, ever, ever once, and I can say never, correct the child, ever. So they can do it wrong. They can get up on the chair. They can sit up in the chair wrong. I never correct them, but parents are super good at correcting them. And I'm like, nope, not in here, not in play therapy. We do not correct. There is zero correction. There's no need for it. I don't need to fix anything. I don't ask questions. I don't say, so, I don't ask questions. You just state, those alligator tears are super big. I see that you're laying on the floor. I see that you're really tired. Is that true? Then you can ask, they'll tell you if it's not. But you don't need to ask questions. You just state the obvious and what you observe. Okay, so that's good on number 3. Listen, validate, and reflect. And then reflect on yourself first, because this is the biggest part, is when you start personalizing and you start getting the upset, because they're acting like this, or they're having a response, or they're freaking out because you asked them to do the dishes. What is it about you that sends you off into this behavior? So just watch that. Just you be observant of yourself first, because that has to start with. So coach and label. So how the child feels. So after you've empathized, after you've sat in their space, after you've listened, after you've observed all this stuff, then it's like, okay, here's my space. I'm going to investigate. So like I said, you ask the question. It seems like, so you state all this stuff. It seems like you look like it's normal for, I can see blank. What does your body feel like? That's a question. I see that you're crying, kicking, yelling, shaking. Wow, I think you're like an 8 out of 10. Wow, this is extreme. You're an 8 out of 10 right now. You are kicking like I've never seen you kick. You must have had a really rough day. And that is coaching, labeling, and then you can be, it seems like, and then you call the secondary emotion. But there has to be several usually. Okay, so you want to find several different secondary emotions that you can label. I mean, you would not believe when I have young teenagers or young children that's, I'm talking 10 to 15 in my office, and we do an imaginary scenario, or we do a feelings, a coaching of how to write down their emotional feelings and how they're feeling every day. And especially when I say, okay, let's do an imagery, and they have to find 5 secondary emotions from that imagery. Over and over and over again, I have these really unique secondary emotions that kids come up with. One of them is free. And I said, how do you feel when you're imagining you're doing this and this? And what's one of your 5 emotions that you're having when you do this imagery? It's amazing. Freedom and free happens a lot. It blows my mind how intelligent kids come up with these feelings. That means they need that. They need to be free. They need to feel freedom. They need to feel safe. And they need to feel understood. That's the biggest ones that kids are craving. So just so you know, in general, what would it be like to feel free? Just free of this, of that, of pressure, of perfectionism, of powerless. Those are my 3 P words that I love. So how to be free of those. and they imagine what it would look like and feel like to be free. There is so much pressure and perfectionism going on that turns into powerless, that turns into a lot of opposites that we don't want our kids to be going through. You know, we all have to go through some of that pressure, right? But we're put in a place where we have a lot of pressure nowadays that we didn't have before, and that's just how it is. But we can combat that. So put a label on it, state it, then put a number on it is even better. So if you can put a number on it, what number are you at? I'm like at an 8. Oh, I'm just a 5. I'm just really frustrated that I got that grade after I studied really hard for that test. Okay, so you're a 5 with frustration. Cool. Then we go into the next step, which is 5. So here's a kid, let's just use that. I throw out all those scenarios all the time I just come up with. So here's a kid that says, I'm frustrated at a 5 because I studied really hard for that test and I got a C. And they come home and they just start tearing up a little bit and they're frustrated and they're upset with themselves and they go into some self-talk that's awful, you know, and they're like, I'm just so stupid. I can't believe I feel, you know, and they're intelligent. So they're saying, I feel really disappointed in myself. So frustration, disappointed, right? Inadequate. So, right, we've got 3 secondary emotions going on right now. So you're sitting in their space, you go through it, you go through several of those secondary emotions. You don't tell them how they ought to feel, because we are super good at that as parents. And this is what we would normally say. This is what I would normally have said. It's okay. You should just be proud of yourself that you studied so hard and your grade's going to be fine. So is that validation? Anyone can say no. That's fixing and correcting. And we didn't hear anything they said. So what we do is we jump in and we like, no, don't feel that way. No, you're okay. You're not stupid. You're not inadequate. You get straight A's with all your other classes. See? And that's all correct, but it's not what we need to say in the moment. So I have lots of misunderstood kids because we're trying to tell them how they ought to feel and not how they're just feeling. And so that's not emotional coaching, that's opposite. So here's the 5 steps inside of 5. So here's setting limits and problem solving. This is my favorite part. It's not always to solve problems though. That's a disclaimer that I always say. It's not always, number 5 is not, it's set limits and possible problem solving. So number 1, you have to remember it's setting limits. This has to be, that's a must. The problem solving isn't that necessary all the time. There isn't a problem to be solved, really. So I just want you to make sure that you understand that part. So in play therapy, I'm not solving problems. I'm just setting limits and I'm validating. So 5 steps inside of this step. Clear limits. My favorite thing ever. According to your value system. And if you don't know your family value system and your own personal value system, find it. That's what that says. So you Google, you go to Brene Brown's website, Brene, B-R-E-N-E, Brown website, and she has a list of values. You Google list of values. There's 250 that pop up. You go through those words and you find your value system. The value systems change over time. So you need to revamp your family value system. This is what I do as a family therapist, and they all come into the therapy session and I say, okay, your 3 top value system, your 3 top values, and your 3 top values, and your 3 top values, and then we put them together. So you provide a preset consequence that's consistent and fair to the behavior, not the emotion. So there's limits to the behavior. So here's the behavior. Here's my bar, everybody. It's right here. And I say this just like this in therapy and everywhere else. This is my bar, which has to be your bar because the system, the legal system says it is. Because I do court-ordered charges and parenting and DUI charges and stuff like that in the job. So here's the bar. You can't hurt yourself or others. So the only rule that I have most of the time in my office is you can't hurt yourself or others. You can't throw something at me, you can't hurt yourself. So you can't hurt yourself or others. Now your family values underneath that, so that means you can't throw stuff. That's domestic violence. You can't hurt yourself or others. You can't, break stuff. You can't. That's not okay. But then here's your bar. Wherever that is, if that's swearing and yelling and screaming is inappropriate and not accepted, then you have that as a family value, and here's your preset consequences. Kicking each other, brothers and sisters, that's already up here. You can't hurt yourself or others. So that's just a no. And you have to have a preset consequence, and that's a little bit of love and logic there. Because you have examples of what the consequence is, and there's two choices. Here's your choice. You get this choice or this choice for that consequence. And those are already set up. If you don't have those set up, then you're just battling instead of having these boundaries. So remember, it has to be related to the emotion, not, it relates to the behavior, not the emotion. So here's the behavior that comes after the emotion. So if they're kicking the wall, that's hurting yourself or others. You can't do that. So what does that look like? And biting and hitting. So that's where we get interventions going. We get distractions. We move the child. They can throw a fit and do this, but they're going to do this over here, but they can't kick the wall or hit their head. That's where we need some therapy if we're getting to that point. So identify the goal. Number 2, what you want to accomplish. There might not be a goal. I promise you, it might not be a goal. You don't need, but there might need to be some repair. So usually there's some repair. So you're going to go through the solution of doing a repair. So if they broke an item during a tantrum, then there has to be repair for that. There has to be a consequence. There has to be earning some money to replace it. There has to be an apology, whatever that is for you. And that's just your family values. Number 3 is think of the possible solutions towards the goal, what the best regulation is that you can help with. Number 4, the solution has to align with your family values. I've already talked about that. 5, help your child find the solution by choices. Encourage coaching, challenging, processing the outcome of logical thinking. Sometimes a good distraction helps. So that's where you have to sometimes we just have to go to the problem solving is you're going to be distracted. You're going to have to do this there. And so you pick a place. So with this limits, number 1, and I don't have this in the PowerPoint, is no consequences of timeouts and everything else is done in the room. I'm going to leave it at that. Our room is for sleep and safety. So find another spot in the house that they can do a timeout in. If that's one of your consequences, for example, to having a behavior that's not acceptable. Timeouts work for some kids. Time-ins work for emotional coaching. So time-in is you're sitting with the kid and you're sitting in their space and you're going over how they feel, what they look like, what it seems like. I can see that you're upset, and this is what your body looks like and feels like. What does your body feel like? My body feels sad for you. So that's what a time-in is. And so if you're not available to do a time-in, then you distract with an emotional bag, a timeout over here. You're going to have to, do this. So teaching them about their emotions have to start first. So that was the first step. This is the last step. So hopefully we have some teaching going on before that. So this is just part of my step 1 and step 2 of a handout you're going to get. And I'm just going to leave it as this because I'm not going to talk about it. We don't have time. And so this handout is this cycle. So if you can see my screen. So I have emotions in the beginning, in the middle, and I have 5 steps of how the brain works with emotions. This is my own handout, also from many books. So this is just one we have to observe. Then we have to experience. So that's all I have on the PowerPoint is the first and the second one. So the thing is like I said, don't block it, be a witness to it, be present. You have to use your 5 senses and no shame, no shame. So real quick, I just thought I'd throw in some little serotonin. I need some serotonin. I don't know about you. I need sunshine. I need some social stuff. We're all depleted in some of this if we aren't because of the quarantining and the crazy weird place that we're at in today's most people don't even know what day it is. We're getting better though, as we're 3 weeks into this main quarantine, working from home, kids are out of school. It's been 3 weeks. So here's my little, because music's always awesome. And I just love this. I'm like, here's some serotonin and dopamine happy tour. Like, I can't even go to a concert. I can't even go to a restaurant. I'm like, my reward system for dopamine and serotonin has been depleted, right? So how do we get serotonin and dopamine to come into our brain? There's lots of things that we have to physically and behaviorally do to get our happy hormones to start producing. Okay, now serotonin, dopamine, things like that. You have an SSRI, if you know what that is, a serotonin inhibitor. It's an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety. But if we don't have serotonin and dopamine in the brain to begin with, those don't work. So we have to do things to help this. So I hope that maybe we could add this in today and help with emotions. So here's some foods that boost dopamine. Cool. What doesn't produce dopamine is saturated fats. So if you're like me, I've added sugar and all this stuff to my diet in the last 3 weeks, and I'm like, I keep on eating sugar because I'm, going back and forth to the kitchen a lot more often. So I'm like, oh. So these are things that will boost it. And here's some things that are extremely important right now. So extremely important. I can't tell you, we've got to take the supplements. These are boosting things that help immune system and serotonin and dopamine in the brain. It helps our focus, it helps our brain function, it helps hold back their protein and sleep. But then we have activities for kids. Arts, crafts, of course, creativity. Brene Brown talks about how to combat this with creativity, okay? Tracing is one of my favorite things. Tracing, not coloring, tracing. It is a very mindful activity. Music, pets, all those things. Okay, so there's my references.